So I have this book right here, and to be honest, some parts of it were genuinely funny. It's a very well-known series, so you probably heard of it. So I'm gonna be reenacting some things in it. Full disclaimer, this is very difficult to watch because I'm desperately trying to make sure I'm not too loud so that I'm not a disturbance to everyone. So this will be awkward. It's gonna be whisper. Oh my god, I don't know what's happening. It's gonna be terrible. There are two basic types of panicking. Standing still and not saying a word, and leaping all over the place, babbling anything that comes into your head. Mr. Poe was the leaping and babbling kind. Goodness golly good God bless Allah, Zeus and Harold, Mary and Joseph, Nathaniel, Hawthorne. Don't touch her, grab her. Move closer, run away, don't move, kill the snake, lay it down, give it some food, don't let it bite her. Kill the snake, lure it away. Snake, you're snake. We all know, of course, that you should never, ever, 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 ever. It's bitten her, it bit her, it bited her, calm down, get moving, call an ambulance, call police, call a scientist, call my wife, this is terrible, this is awful, this is ghastly, this is fantastic, this is nothing to worry about. Ever, 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 ever. When you were very small, perhaps someone read to you the insipid story, the word insipid here means not worth telling, of the boy who cried wolf. A very dull boy, you remember, cried wolf when there was no wolf, to find the gullible townspeople showing up, finding no wolf. Later, he then cried wolf when there actually was one, and the townspeople did not show up, and he was eaten by the wolf. Now, the moral of the story here is obviously, don't live in places where there are wolves. That's really totally fake. Ever, 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 ever. There's another story concerning wolves that someone has probably read to you, which is just as absurd. I'm talking about Little Red Riding Hood, an extremely unpleasant little girl who, like the boy who cried wolf, insisted on intruding on the territory of dangerous animals. You will recall that the wolf, after having been treated very rudely by Little Red Riding Hood, ate the little girl's grandmother and put on her clothes as a disguise. It is this aspect of the story that is the most ridiculous, because one would think that even a girl as dim-witted as Little Red Riding Hood ever, 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 ever. It certainly appears to be an accident. I'm sorry, children, but Dr. Montgomery seems like an appropriate guardian for you. He was more than that. He was much more than an appropriate guardian. That's Uncle Monty's food. Stop eating his food. Was he not paying attention? Ever, 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 ever. Why didn't you want me to sell this scroll up when the adults come to fetch us? You make sure they stay in that room for as long as possible. How will I do that? Create a distraction. What distraction? For goodness sake, Klaus. Put it on, Bambini. It's Violet, Uncle Monty. No one is named Bambini. No one is named Bambini. Bambini is just the word for children. Ever, ever fiddle around with electronic devices. Now let me reiterate. It is now necessary for me to use the Hackney phrase back at the ranch, which Hackney is a word that means it was used by so many writers that by the time Lemony Snicket uses it, it will become the cliche. Occasionally, his eyes closed. He found himself reading the same sentence over and over again. He found himself reading the same sentence over and over again. He found himself reading the same sentence over and over again. He found himself... But the law is not a thing. For instance, there's a country in Europe that has a law that requires all bakers to sell bread at the same price. There's a certain island that has a law that forbids anyone from removing its fruit. And there's a town not too far from where you live that bars me from going 5 miles within its borders. You will go to jail, and the 3 children will live with me. Arrest him! Send him to jail! And give us our money back. That was an awful play. Sunny made the sound that sounded like an angry bird. Also, she wants to do something known as casing the joint. Facing the joint means observing a particular location in order to formulate a plan. For instance, if you are a bank robber, he was very tall and very thin, dressed in a gray suit that had many dark stains on it. His face was unshaven, rather than two eyebrows like most human beings, had just one long eyebrow. His eyes were very, very shiny. He hung up and quickly wrote something down on one of his papers, then looked at the children. "I'm sorry," he said. "What were you saying?" "Well, making you do chores doesn't sound too bad." "He has terrible friends. He calls us orphans. He's always asking about a fortune." Boko. This was from Sonny. What? Yes. 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 No. Yes. Thank you. I'm sorry, what were you talking about? Are you familiar with the term in loco parentis? Something about trains? One moment. 7. 7. 7. 7. 6.5. 7. You're welcome. Huh? That's the whole video. And there's a lesson to be learned. To never, ever, ever